One axe. That's the whole of my tool chest for this build. No saw, no broadaxe, no second pair of hands. Because my husband fell ill and I buried him on the trail before we ever reached this valley, and the families in our wagon company scattered to their own claims the day we got here. Just me, this axe, and whatever the two of us can manage between us. And here's the thing that'll take you longest to believe: the axe was never going to be what stopped me. My own arms were. Hi, I'm Annie. 4 families came out together in that wagon company, and I'm the only one of them building alone this season. There's no barn raising crew coming for me. It's this axe or nothing. So nothing it is not going to be. Now, when folks hear one axe, they picture a fellow chopping down a tree and not much else. Oh, that axe does considerably more than that. Once the tree's down, I use the same blade to cut the notches at each corner. If I want the wall faces to be flat instead of round, which makes for a snugger fit and less wasted heat, I use that same axe again to score them as flat as one tool and one arm can manage. A man with money for 2 more tools, a broad axe for hewing, and a cross-cut saw for clean, straight cuts gets a tighter build out of it than I will. I've got neither. So my walls will show the marks of a single blade doing a job built for 3 tools, and that's simply how it's going to be. This axe felled trees the whole way out here, too. Kept sharp enough the entire trip that my husband could have shaved with it. He never got the chance, though. First job, before any of the building happens, is picking which trees are worth the swing. I want them straight, not too wide around, because a log I can't budge alone is worse than useless to me. For a cabin the size I'm after, I'm looking at something near 15 or 20 trees all told, once you count the shorter ones. I'll need for the gapple ends up top. Felling one, that's the easy part of the day. Limping it, dragging it clear, and doing that again and again from sun up near to dark. That's where a day actually goes. The moment a tree's down, the bark comes off it. Same day if I can manage it. Leave the bark on for more than a couple days and it starts gripping the wood tight enough that stripping it later is twice the work. Leave it on for good and it's an open invitation to rot and every insect in this valley. Once I've got enough logs on the ground, I cut my notch at the end. I'm using the saddle notch, a simple half-moon cut on the underside of the log so it sits down over the one beneath it. It's not the fanciest joint there is, I'll grant you that. A trained joiner would tell you the dovetail notch locks tighter and looks better doing it, cut at an angle so the corners interlock instead of just resting. But a dovetail takes real skill and real time to get right, more of both than I have to spare working alone. So I'm taking the saddle notch and the slightly looser fit that comes with it and calling that an even trade. A fair one, I think. You can tell a good deal about a family just by looking at how their corners are cut. My mother's people cut a different notch entirely. Sharper, more angled, the kind that takes an extra hour a corner and shows it. Out here, walking through a valley full of cabins, you could near enough guess who came from where and who learned building from who, just by studying the joints at the corner of each wall. Mine will say plain enough that I had one axe, no help, and not 1 hour to spare on anything fancier than what would hold. Size is another thing the corners can't hide. And it's not something I got to choose freely either. Most single roof cabins out here run somewhere between 12 and 16 feet square. One room, what folks call a pen. Mine will sit at the smaller end of that. A bigger footprint means longer logs, and longer logs weigh more than I can drag or lift on my own. So the size of this cabin was decided the day I decided to build it without help, long before I ever swung the axe once. As that wall climbs up around chest height, then shoulder height, I run straight into the limit of this whole build, and it's got nothing to do with the axe. A man working by himself, and I'm no different, generally can't raise a log any higher than about 6 or 8 courses up before he simply runs out of the strength to get it there. That's the wall you'll see standing on a lot of solo built cabins around here, 6 or 8 logs high, no taller, and it's not a matter of the builder not wanting it to be taller. There was nothing there to help him lift it. So I've had to get inventive about the lifting. I lean 2 logs up against the wall at an angle, like a ramp, and roll the next log up that ramp instead of hoisting it straight off the ground. A rope looped around the far end helps me guide it and keep it from rolling back down onto my own foot, which I have not always managed as gracefully as I'd like. It's slower than lifting, and it's more work in some ways, not less. But it gets a log up past the height my arms alone could ever manage. And every extra course I manage to wrestle up that ramp is a course I can use, because once this wall's tall enough, I'm putting in a loft. Just pegs driven straight into the logs for a ladder, and the floorboards laid across the joists up top. But it's a dry storage for whatever I harvest this fall. And come winter, it's a place to sleep that isn't sitting right on the cold floor. None of that exists without those extra ramped up courses. There's a record the historian Wes Lager wrote of 3 men who felled the trees, hauled the logs, cut the notches, and had a complete cabin standing with a working chimney and fireplace in 2 days flat. 2 days! I'm not foolish enough to measure myself against that and feel good about the comparison. What 3 sets of arms and 3 axes can do together in 2 days, one woman with 1 axe is going to take closer to 2 weeks to manage. Maybe longer if the weather turns against me. That gap right there is the entire cost of not having a crew. The roof comes last. Once the walls are as high as I can get them, same axe splits the rafter logs, and the same axe revs out the shingles, one at a time, each one shaved off by hand until I've got enough to lay the whole roof over. No nails in any of it, not one. And before I ever get to chinking with mud, I'm wedging scraps of wood, whatever slender pieces I've shaved off the limbs and straw I've saved, right into the widest gaps between the logs first. The mud goes on after that, packed in over the wood, and between the 2 of them, the wall actually holds heat instead of just looking like it should. Even where I set this cabin mattered more than I expected going in. The front faces south, so I'll get what sun there is through the winter. And I left the west wall solid. No door, no window cut into it at all, so the worst of the wind has nothing but log to push against. The floor is the one piece I haven't decided yet. If I've got the strength left in me once that roof's on, I'll split a few logs lengthwise and lay them side up for a puncheon floor, warmer underfoot than bare dirt come winter. If I don't, this house spends its first winter with packed earth, same as most first winters out here, and I'll make my peace with that. Either way, the walls will already be standing by then, 6 or 8 logs of them, cut and notched, and raised by one woman and 1 axe. And that's the part nobody's going to be able to argue with, floor or no floor.